You see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. You are amazing, God.
We're in the second Sunday of a sermon series about Matthew 7. And Matthew 7 is the third chapter that tells us about the Sermon on the Mount. That Jesus went on the mountain and sat down and just gave his manifesto to his disciples, what his kingdom was all about and what his kingdom looks like. And in Matthew 7 he gives us a bunch of how-tos, how to do this and how to do that. And today we are going to look at how to build a life. And it is about doing it the Jesus way. So when we are going to talk about building, it reminds me of a set of situations that I was confronted with when we built our house back in 2004 in the Netherlands. Or we didn't build it, but we had a contractor build our house. It was part of a project of around 20 houses that were built, and we bought one, and then you can give some input on how this house will look like on the inside, because on the outside they will look all the same. And we ended up living in that house for 15 nice and comfortable years. But the whole building process in the first 2 years we lived in that house was a living nightmare. And I lost my faith in the building world. I won't say completely because it was restored later, but what we had experienced was just incredible. Just to give you an example, our bathroom has been broken down and built up 4 times because they couldn't get it right. And after the second time, it turned out that the water from the shower and the bathtub went under the tiles in the bathroom and onto the floor and the landing, under the wooden floor and in the bedroom next door, because they had used the wrong glue to put the tiles on the walls and on the floor. They used tiles that were not meant, that they used glue not meant for the bathroom, but just for anywhere else in the house that didn't have to take water. Just a slight oversight. So this is a picture of how we found our bathroom just about a year when we lived there, because everything had to be taken out again. And then in the next door bedroom, there was fungus growing on the wall because of all the water that was next door. And we had to take out the wooden floor, and they had to restore everything. 4 times it took them to make sure that the bathroom was all right. And of course, every time they had to redo it, it cost them money. It was a little bit of a challenge to live with all of that. And one thing that we also knew is that the roof was so bad that after every storm that we had in the Netherlands, because that's where we lived, the lowlands, we have a lot of storms, then the roof pans would come off. And after the 3rd time that had happened, because it blows regularly in that country, when they warned for a storm, I would take my car and park it totally somewhere else, because I knew that sooner or later the roof pans would fall on my car. So eventually I had a contractor look at it. It was one of my clients, and he said, well, no wonder the pans keep falling off the roof, because the hooks that they had to be connected to the roof that it was just way too few. So the pans would keep on falling off. So he said you have to talk to the contractor to build the house to do it better, to do a better job. And he said, by the way, the plastic that is supposed to be under the roof pans, it's not there, or it's way too short. So eventually they had to lift all the roof pans, put the plastic on, and put the hooks on the roof pans to make it more sturdy. And then you see there were slats, wooden slats on the front and the back of the house. And on the back of the house, when it was east wind and it was raining, the rain came down on the inside wall. Now normally the rain should stay outside of the house. We all agree to that, huh? So it turns out that the plastic that should be on there, it was not folded towards the gutter, but it was folded inside so that all the rain came inside. And that while the house was being built, we had agreed with the contractor between the two bedrooms at a certain level, you shouldn't build a wall because we're going to put walk-in closets there. So my wife went into the work while they were building, and sure enough there was a guy building a wall where there shouldn't be a wall. And by the way, you had to pay extra not to have a wall built, because that deviates from the standard. So my wife says, you shouldn't build a wall here. And the guy says, I get paid to build a wall, so I build a wall. So my wife goes to the foreman and he says, they're building a wall where they shouldn't build a wall. And sure enough, he comes along and says, no, you should stop building the wall. We'll take the wall away. I said, but the ceiling is damaged now. It was spray painted. He said, oh, we'll fix that a little bit. I said, no, you're not going to fix that a little bit. You're going to do it over again, because otherwise we will see it till the end of days. So I want you to redo the ceiling. So it was just on and on and on it went. With the official delivery of the house to us, I had contracted my contractor to look at the house, whether it was okay. And within 30 seconds that he walked into this house, he went to the back door. He says, the window that's in this door is in the wrong way, because it is inside out and upside down. I said, so how do you see that? He says, well, you know, these windows, they have a certain seal in it, and it is down there instead of up there, and it is outside instead of inside. I said, anybody who works in the building industry will know that, but apparently they don't, so they have a little bit of a problem there. So it was a living nightmare. But in the end, I think the house that they built for us cost us at least twice as much, with all the extra work that they had to do in the repair work, and the fixing up and lifting the roof and taking the slats off and whatever, it cost at least twice as much. And after the house was delivered to us, the company that built it was a big employer in the Netherlands in the building industry. They went bankrupt. So I sometimes say jokingly, they went bankrupt because of me. Yeah, so that teaches me one thing, that you have to do it right from the beginning. And by the way, in the end, we lived in this house happily 15 years, and we had wonderful companies. We had people staying with us from all over the world, and it was like a place where youth came and hang out, and we had lots of meals together. Which, by the way, spoiler alert, even in your life, if you mess up somewhere along the road, it doesn't mean that you're doomed forever. There are new beginnings. There is a new start that you can have in your life when something gets messed up. Okay? Spoiler, we get to that a little bit later. So you have to get it right when you build. You have to do it right. And in this context, we have to do it the Jesus way, what Jesus tells us in this parable. After a few years, we had an addition put on to the house. And I didn't have to work with the contractor that the house was built by. And he wasn't there anymore because they went bankrupt. But I did my homework right. I checked out the references of the builders to see what builder had good quality and did a good job in doing an addition to a house. And probably I paid more than with just a builder that would be the cheapest, but it went like a charm because they just did it right. By the way, if you're looking for a contractor, make sure that you have a contractor who's got his logistics process arranged right, because that's the determining factor whether they do their stuff right or not. And exactly the same goes for building your life. Make sure that you do it right from the start, to do it more painstakingly, to put in more effort in the things that you don't see right away, making sure that you do the right things in the right order so that the product that is delivered is the best that you can have. Or when you have to rebuild things in your life because things went kaput, make sure you do it right. And don't make the same mistakes again and again for the second or the third time. Now, I don't know how about you, but I find Jesus quite black and white in this parable. So Jesus doesn't say, well, we've got a few choices. We've got an extra wise person. We've got a wise person. We've got a reasonably wise person. We've got a mediocre person. We've got a little bit foolish, and we've got a fool, and we've got a terrible fool. No, Jesus says, either you're on one side or the other side. A wise man or the fool. And by the way, the word for fool that Jesus is using here is not a compliment, and it's just not a fickle word. The word fool, when you look it up in the Greek text, is moro, and it is derived from the word moron. I'm talking about Greek so far. Eh? So then I looked this up, and indeed from this Greek word, our English word moron is derived from. I was kind of surprised. And I thought, whoa, Jesus is really making a statement here. If you don't heed the words of Jesus in your life, you are, and I am, a moron. Yeah, that is basically the message that Jesus wants to convey. You're stupid if you don't heed the words of Jesus. And Jesus is not very pluralistic here. He doesn't say, well, everyone has got his own truth, and if it's true for you, it's okay. And it said, no, Jesus says, if you hear my words and do them, then you're wise. If you only hear them and not implement them, you're a moron. That's basically the message that Jesus is trying to convey. So you can ask yourself, so if you look at the houses that the fool and the wise men are building, are they very different? I would say that on the outside you couldn't see who was the fool and who was the wise man, because maybe their houses looked exactly the same. Or I might even say, because the fool never paid any money to have a foundation being built, or his house hooked up to a foundation, he's got more money available. Maybe his house looked even much better. Maybe his house just looked grandeur. Could well be, because he didn't have to spend money on the foundation. But in the end, the foundations determine the sturdiness of the house, not how it looks, not how it imposes you. No, the foundation determines the sturdiness of the house. Now, please notice, Jesus doesn't say, well, the wise man let the cement truck come and put down the cement foundation, because in Jesus' days they didn't have cement trucks and they didn't have cement, or at least they didn't know what they had to use for cement. So cement foundations only came later in life. But you know what the case is, that if you have a house built, then you will know that after the foundation is laid, you get the first invoice of the contractor that you have to pay. And it's at least 15% of the total cost of the house. What? Why do you spend 15% of the whole cost of building a house in something that you don't see anymore? Sometimes we would say, well, that's a waste of money, right? But we all know, also from this story, And also from bad examples, if you don't have the foundation right, then the house that's being built upon it can go to waste very easily. So that's why you have to pay a good amount of money to have a good foundation laid. So foundations cost money and effort and design and calculations to have the right foundation. And it goes exactly for my life and your life. If we want to have a good foundation, maybe you don't see it at all, but what determines is how much effort we put in that foundation. Things like time with God. Things like having a good emotional health. Things like discipline and study. And just consistency, and not living for the moment, but living for the goals that you set yourself. Those kind of things. Nobody sees it. But in the end, it will determine whether your house will stand or not. So doing it right, and the foundations determine the sturdiness. So Jesus doesn't say in this parable, I am the rock. We sang about that, and that's a truth in itself. And Jesus doesn't say, well, you need me as a foundation. That's not what Jesus says in this parable. Jesus says very concretely, if you want to have a good foundation, you have to listen to my words and implement them. Do them. And if you don't, you're a moron. That's what he says. So the deciding factor whether your house will stand is not a lot of things. It's just whether you do the words of Jesus or don't do the words of Jesus. So what do we have to think of when we hear those things that Jesus says, if you do my words? It is things like Jesus teaching us to not be embezzled by materialism, but gather treasures in heaven. It is a thing like where Jesus says, don't worry. And don't let worry and ulcers ruin your health. It's Jesus teaching us, forgive freely. Everyone. Don't hold a grudge. It is about fidelity, being faithful to your spouse. It is being faithful to the ones that God has put you in your life. It is about guarding your heart. It is about having a singular lifestyle and not be a person of duplicity. It is about doing unto others as you wish them to do to you, what we talked about last Sunday. It is about Jesus telling us to pray and spend time with God and come to the Father. Those kind of things. If you do those kind of things, you'll build a foundation for your life. If you don't do these things and you don't implement them, your foundation will be very weak. And why is that important? Because we know that storms will come. Maybe you're sitting here and you're young, and so far it has been good sailing as a young person. Then I can promise you one thing, sooner or later in your life, the storms will come. So what kind of storms do you have to think of? Well, things like maybe you will get sick in some way or another, or some deficiency in your bodily functions will come to light, or you will get sick, and maybe even lethally sick. Where will you be? How sturdy will your foundation be? Maybe you're confronted with death and loss. Maybe you lose a parent. Maybe you lose a friend. Maybe you lose a spouse. What your foundation is like at that moment determines how you will get through it. Maybe you will find yourself unemployed. Maybe you get fired from your job. Maybe you have difficulties in relationships that you never thought would happen. Maybe you bump into disappointments along the way. Maybe you're treated unjustly by someone. Maybe you didn't get the job that you hoped for. Maybe instead of a promotion you're being degraded. Maybe you find yourself in situations between the wall and the hard rock. I don't know what kind of storms will come your way. But one thing I do know is that how your foundation is at the moment that the storm hits will determine if your life's house will stand or fall. When you start building the foundation when the storm hits, you are too late. You should have built that foundation beforehand, before the storm comes. Because when the storm hits, you don't have time anymore to build that foundation. You don't have time anymore to just quickly build a foundation of trust in God, or build a foundation of discipline and study and making sure that you're grounded in your faith. You should have a foundation before the storm hits. So what is the significant difference between the wise man and the fool? I think one of the major differences is that the fool, he lives only for the moment. Like, I want a house now. I don't want to spend time on the foundation. I want it now. I build it and voila, there it is. You know, maybe it is 10 years before the storm comes and the fool says to the wise man, look at you. You put so much money and effort in building a foundation. I didn't. And my house is bigger because I had more money. Yeah, that the fool lives only for the moment. And it always will catch up on you. On the other hand, however, the wise man, he thinks ahead. He sees the risks. He sees the necessity for having a good foundation. He has done his homework and sees what is necessary to have a good foundation for life when the storm comes. Here's an advice for everyone here. Make sure that in your life you build margin into your life. You build margin into your life. Build margin into your life in your spiritual life, in your emotional life, in your financial life. Don't spend everything you have. In your relational life, make sure that you invest there and that you've got margin. Because you will need that margin sooner or later. Maybe you think, I don't need friends. I'm alone. I'm the king of my universe. You're going to need friends when the storms are there. A shoulder to cry on, someone to help, someone to come alongside, someone to talk to, someone to tell you the truth. You need a friend at that moment. But you will only have friends then if you have invested in it beforehand. So make sure that you do the right thing and you think ahead of what you're going to need in your life. One of the sobering things, that's also my last point, is knowing that both men, both the wise man and the fool, they heard exactly the same thing. It's not that the fool didn't hear the words of Jesus, because in this parable, Jesus assumes that both heard exactly the same things. Jesus' words. So probably the fool and the wise man, they went to the same church. They listened to the same preacher. Maybe they listened both to this sermon. And still the outcome is different. And what makes the difference? Whether you do the words of Jesus or don't do the words of Jesus. And you know, maybe the fool paid bigger money to the church even. Because he had more money available, because they have the foundation. Maybe the fool had bigger experience in church. But Jesus doesn't say that that is the determining factor. Jesus says the determining factor is whether you do the words of Jesus or whether you don't do the words of Jesus. You're going to implement them or not implement them. And if you're not implementing, you're a moron. That's what Jesus, it's not what I'm saying, that's what Jesus said. So we're sitting here this morning, and I hope that you mentally check for yourself, am I the wise man or am I the fool? And if you're honest to yourself, and you have to say to yourself, well, to be honest, I'm more like the fool, then maybe this morning would be a good moment to think, I'm going to do that different. Because I'm not prepared for the storms, I don't have a good foundation, and I need that good foundation. Then this moment is a good moment to say, Lord, I want to heed your word. I want to start doing the words of Jesus. I'm going to implement them in my life. Let this morning be a reset. I want to challenge you to do that. And if you're someone that you say, well, I'm honestly trying to implement the words of Jesus in my life, I want to say, bravo, well done. Continue doing it. And you will see that the foundation that you're building will last you throughout your life and that you can fall back on.